So we have our first official guest for Mediumships and Meals special segment where we have a spirited little conversation as we dine about the dearly departed, all things in the spiritual community, but we're doing it in a Hannah fun way where we're going to be playing a game together. And I've already sent Chemo his special prop. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know what's in the box. I promise Chemo it's not going to attack you. It's nothing alive. But I do want to introduce everybody to you. So please, everybody, let me give a warm welcome to Chemo. And I've been practicing his last name, Capano. Chemo Capano. How'd I do?
You did so good. You did so good.
Okay, good. But he also you're Hawaiian Lightseer, High Seer, and you're known as the Lightseer, right? And this is the way folks know you on the social media platform.
Yes. And you're doing so good. All the intros, all the names, keep on going.
Keep it all going. Keep it all going. Okay. So what I said is about what I have about Chemo here. I wrote a little blurb about you. This was my little tribute to Chemo. I said that, Chemo, Chemo's a light seer who visually sees, feels, and understands and helps us explore and educates us about energy and the energy in our bodies, the energy in objects, the energy of others, and how we interact with it, what it is, what it isn't, how it works, how it impacts our everyday experiences, and you do have such a grounded, down-to-earth educational experience, Chemo, that I feel like you're empowering people. I feel like that the takeaway I get is that you want people to feel a connection to their own energy and the energy of others in a way that's kind of fun and uplifting. And it removes the spooky ooky, I think, that people can feel sometimes about the spirit world. So bravo, my friend.
First, what a lovely, lovely introduction. I should put that as my business boilerplate. It was so good. It was so good. Thank you for that. That was such a kind thing to say.
Well, thank you. And so for today's episode, what we decided to do was have you still in the spirit of Mediumship and a Meal, where we recreate a dish that reminds us of our loved one. You did submit some ingredients to me that I have the option to put together and hopefully make something that resembles what it was supposed to be. And then you have a box in front of you of a game that I want to play with you that is food related, that you don't know what's in there. So there's two reveals going on, and I just want to know which one do you want to do first.
Let's do you first. I want to see what you did.
Okay, so I wanted the full disclosure on this recipe was there was literally no recipe, so everybody knows. It was just a list of ingredients, and there wasn't even proportions. I think it's like a dump recipe. Did I get that right? Was this just like put it all in a bowl and hope for the best?
Very much the Great British Bake Off, just giving you a challenge of giving you the ingredients and seeing what you intuitively did with it.
Okay, and I intuitively think I picked up on a missing ingredient and I added it. So I need to know once I show you what I mean and once I added, was it missing or did I miss the mark with my intuition? So here, ready? Okay, here we go. So I recreated what looks like to me like a Mexican hot chocolate type cookie.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. They smell divine. They have this rich, deep flavor in them. When I was making them, I could there's so in case anybody wants to know, they'll get to watch and we'll Ben, cut that part out. I'm gonna cough. Sorry, Ben. I think the cayenne okay, so let me give full disclosure. I might have put a little extra cayenne in these because when I opened the lid, it kind of hit me. I think a little went a long way and I might have put a lot in. So that might be my only folly here a little bit, but what I did end up doing was I noticed that in all the ingredients, it was missing a leavening agent. There was no baking soda. So is that intentional? Do these cookies not usually have baking soda, or when I got the list, was it just not in the list?
I think that your addition has made it so beautiful. So this is what was needed. That was needed. You added a little bit of your own flavor. I would eat that up in a heartbeat. I want it. I want it.
Right. Well, I'm going to have a bite then. So I did. Okay. There was 4 cookies and now there's 3 because one was eaten the day of cooking, but I still have it here to take a bite. And what I did is I rolled it in the cinnamon sugar to give it kind of a little extra sparkly, crunchy flavor to it. So.
How do you do a spice?
Are
you a spice girl? Of course, I'm going to ask you when your mouth is full.
So, I might take a big bite too. I'm no Food Network star. I'm going to take a bite. I'm going to bite. They're not really.
No, of course, when your mouth is full, I ask that question. How do you tend to do a spice normally?
I like the spicier. I think the better, especially if you're creating something with a depth of flavor. I really like it to greet me, but I still think I might have gone a little heavy. You know, you still kind of just like,
I love that. I have burned all my taste buds off. I I love high extreme of spices. That I'm so impressed with what you just did. That recipe, well, I mean, I didn't give you the exact recipe because I didn't know the exact recipe, but I
okay.
fell in love with those kinds of baked goods and cookies and more when I was working in Mexico. And I was a cruise ship entertainer for years, performing
Oh, okay.
overseas. And I did several contracts out of the Mexican Riviera, out of going back and forth and back and forth. And when I was in Acapulco, I was exposed to these cookies, and I was like, "What is this? The spice and the sweetness." I was in heaven, right?
What brings your soul, right? You're just
Right?
like,
It just ignited all of my senses, and I was in such a state of bliss. That's my go-to dessert now.
okay. So that was my question. Was it connected to a family member? But no, it was connected to a community and an experience for you. And when you eat it, it kind of takes you back and transports you to that time.
Does. And you know what's so interesting about working in Acapulco is as a cruise ship entertainer, you are port in the town and you do all the like touristy things, but that's not actually a reflection of who I am. What I wanted to do is I wanted to go outside of the conventional touristy areas. And that's when I began to communicate with the community about things that were just like I had my Spanish is not so good, but I had to like do the best that I could to try to make communications. And I went to the areas that were incredibly rural, meaning like they were like shanty towns and like kids who were just walking around with no shoes and no socks. I was like, I want to know where you're going because this is so much more fascinating to me than all the tourists that I'm on board this massive ocean liner with. I want to go where you're going. So it is so much more nostalgic than I could articulate. It reminds me of dancing in Acapulco in the rain and meeting all these people and having to find a way to communicate with them. For me, not being a very good Spanish speaker. So good job. Good job.
So that's funny. So you're making me realize the connection to energy there. So you literally, even in your work, working on a cruise ship, and this is this prior to your current work that you were working as the light seeing work as a light seer. Was this prior to this work, or was this in conjunction with, or was there overlap?
So the way that I have worked, I've always worked intuitively, but I've always at least tried to find a way to integrate that within my performative world because I was a very, very young childhood performer, but I was also a very young educator. So when I started to teach around the age of 16, I was 15 going to 16 is when I first started to teach workshops based on energy work, based on the way that I could see it. At the same time, the kids that would come and take my workshops were all performative kids. So I'd be working with a group anywhere between 15 to 300, and we would talk about how the energy flows through in the creative performance and how that manifests, and then we would amplify it during their performances. So that was kind of my beginning aspect, but who I am is I've always been this way. The way that I work on Broadway, the way that I direct, the way that I produce, the way that I educate, it's always been this variation. But the emergence of Lightseer happened outside of the performative world. And I mean, that just kind of emerged as who I was specifically as an educator, not who I was as a performer. But those cookies is a great kind of symbiotic moment of performative world and energetic world at the same time.
Kind of the combination, so that you ended up actually. I love that with food is the way to communicate, right? Like that is one of those universal languages, energy and food. It's like you can sit down, you connect with people over food, you connect with them energetically. It starts this energetic exchange. And so
Absolutely.
speaking of food, you can now open your box. You have
Is there
something in
food
that
in
box.
here?
Oh, I mean, they're okay. We're gonna open first, explain second.
On it. And I'm looking at all these little fortune cookies on it that says, do not open until interview.
Hold up, what it
This is
says.
what I want the audience at home to see. So I'm looking at it says, what does it say? It says curious cookies on it, and it's got these little cute fortune cookies on it, and this really beautiful box that says do not open until interview. Can I open it now?
You can open now. You can open now because this is part of our game. This is part of, we're going to dive into more questions about chemo.
It
And
says scrumptious game inside. I love it. Scrumptious was misspelled here, but it still works.
teacher,
Oh
we did not get past kindergarten. So Spelling's not part of it.
I'm totally joking. I'm just being a jerk. Should I read this first?
Sure.
There's a little letter in here. We could play an intuitive game if I to see if I can see what it says beforehand.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Oh, how sweet! There's a so I'm looking at a monarch butterfly, a little mariposa, and how sweet. So it says, "Thank you for sharing your light with so many, and in a tangible, down to earth, and unique way. I hope you enjoy the scrumptious game." I love this. Okay, let's open.
Awesome. So
Open.
here's the rules of engagement for this game that you're opening up. Are you ready? Okay. First, I have to tell folks because they're not going to believe me. I didn't know your recipe was a cookie. You didn't know I was sending you cookies. Can we just like make the connection on that alone?
I love that. I love that.
So before we even started, I said, you know what? I've got to do something fun with Chemo. We're going to have to find a fun game to play together. We're going to do something that's like asking him questions and insights. And so what I did is I asked folks who are subscribers to my site to submit questions that they would want to ask you. And it was only subscribers were the only ones who knew you were coming on. Everyone else, they're going to be surprised by who's on this episode. And could they come up with a question that they would feel like if they could ask you in person or ask you maybe one that they haven't seen you answer before on any of your videos to submit them. And then I selected a few and I put them into Chemo's Curious Cookies. And when you open them, it even has the name of the participant who submitted the question for you.
You have put so much work into production quality here. So much work into this.
I'm so excited for you to get to open them. So what we're going to do though is just ask you that, just using your intuition, you're going to randomly reach into your Curious Cookie box. I'm not suggesting you eat them since I had never made them before. I don't know how edible they are, Chemo. I want your teeth are too beautiful for me to mess them up.
But they're definitely getting 8.
Okay, well, I don't think they're going to have the flavor profile of this, and just make sure you have lots of something liquid to get them down.
They'll definitely get 8.
Awesome.
Okay.
You get to pick one and open it up, and then I have some other questions here to ask you in between your Curious Cookie questions to keep it flowing. So
in this package, I'll move it away from my microphone so it's not so loud.
Fantastic.
This is so fun.
This is fun. Just random question. You're just going to get the answer, and people are going to know more about you, and you can share more. And then in between, I might pop in one of these great questions that didn't make it to the cookies, but we have them here for you.
Cookies?
I made these cookies.
I am so, they're definitely getting 8. I am so impressed. Okay, I'm going to open the very first one.
Awesome. It took 3 batches to get to those. I'll tell you, the first couple batches, it was definitely trial and errors that I've never made them before.
Well, it looks like all success to me. So let me just break it open. I cannot believe you got these messages on the inside of these cookies. Yay. I am so impressed. I'm going to have a little taste.
Okay, let's see. You don't have to lie. It's okay. If they're not edible, it's okay.
There's a nice sweetness to that. This is so much better than regular fortune cookies.
Well, I will take the compliment.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm opening the very first one. This is from Tina. Hi, Tina. Tina says, "A time in your youth, you bent the rules and got away with it." Oh, well, so we'll talk about things that are unethical.
Before you evolved into on your journey here, everybody gets to know the evolution of you prior to where you are now. Was there anything you ever did that you go, maybe I wouldn't do that again?
I do that all the time. There's so many moments of reflection where I say, oh, no. I should not have done it that way. And I actually think that it's really helpful for us to always be in a state of evolution. Always. Otherwise, I feel like, and maybe you have seen this as well, when you meet the other spiritualists or mediums or psychics who get to that point where there is only a ceiling, and you realize, wow, you haven't had any more development since that thought process began. And there should always be development at all times. And even though I know that I can see wild, crazy things, and for me, Hannah, things are predominantly sight related, even though I tune into all my senses and I use that ability to work with doctors. But when I see everything predominantly as sight related, if I were to make snap judgment of the things that I saw as a little kid versus the things that I see now, though they might look similar, intelligently, I have to communicate with it differently. Otherwise, I'm not getting the full volume of what spirit intention is. I'm just getting like the bird's eye view, and that's just judgment. So for me, when I bent the rules, I didn't realize I was bending rules as a kid. I would walk around and I would say all these kinds of things to people. You're working on this. What's that? And why are you doing that? And my grandmother used to always say to me, "Eh, no, oye, no, no, yele," which translates into "You are so damn nosy, child." Yeah, because I was always looking inward. And now, having gone through practice and education, you realize it is always appropriate to ask. It is always appropriate to ask. And someone phrased it for me in the simplest of ways, that they said, how would you like it if someone walked up to you and said, you want to talk about your IBS? I don't have IBS, but my reaction would be like, screw you. Why are you looking at that? And I don't know you, but those are the kinds of things that I was doing, just because it shows up for me when I take a look at someone's body. So definitely try to bend those rules. And I needed to be clocked. And I was clocked by other mediums. Yeah, truly. I was clocked by mediums who were more skilled than I was at the time. And I was being clocked by people who have gone through training processes. And for me, as a young kid in Hawaii, we don't go through the same kind of training processes. We go through Aboriginal training processes, which hold accountability in completely different ways. And I'm grateful for that experience, but I needed to be trained. I needed to
Yeah.
be. I was just like a fire hose with no control.
You see it, you say it, you saw it, and you're excited about it, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
What about
that
you?
makes sense.
You know when you've bent a rule when you weren't supposed to?
Oh, yes. So, okay, I thought I was helping, right? So the guise of I think I'm being helpful Hannah, right? So that's what I think I'm doing. My intentions are well, and I think a lot of people do. That's it, right? You're intending to help, but what do they say? Don't put on your own mask before you put on someone else's. So learn how to take care of yourself before you take care of others. So I would definitely interject myself into situations that I thought were helpful, and all it ended up being is harmful because I didn't know the mental space and place that person was in. I just walked up and would give details that I was seeing or knowing because I thought, oh, I must be seeing and knowing this because they need to know it, and not having that discernment that just because I see it doesn't mean I'm supposed to say it. Sometimes what I can do is energetically wish them well. I can send them good energy consensually, right? Checking in with them energetically. I'll say like, I'm sending love their way. I'm sending a connection, and not insert myself. I just assumed that the insertion was what we're being called to do. And that was an immaturity on my part for sure.
I love that you say it in that way, because what I think that a lot of growing mediums and psychics or intuitives or healers are struggling to learn at first is that, again, just because you can see it doesn't mean you need to say it, but it's a little bit egoic, meaning, but I know that I can be helpful. But that statement is, I know I can be helpful to them, but yet not everyone wants that kind of information. Not everyone is prepared to hear that kind of information. And again, we don't know where they're at with their emotional or mental or physical trauma. We just don't know where they're at.
Yeah, they could
So
be actively grieving and you could push them over the edge. And then you don't necessarily have the tool set or the mindset to help them in that moment. You to continue to be there as a support person, popping in and popping out. It's it's immature.
it is very immature. One of the very first spirit consciousness that I saw as a young child when I was 3 is I saw someone who had unalived themselves. And
Mhm.
I could tell, though I had never seen that unalivement happen. I didn't know what that meant. I had never seen it on TV. I wasn't watching that kind of content, but yet I knew this person had unalived herself. And for some reason, I could see how she did it and the person who was around her and all these other things. And it was so wildly confusing. And there are recordings of me communicating to this other individual and trying to tell all the adults around me what was going on, what was going on. Now, the problem is I was pulling in the names and the aspects. And if I could go back and rewind and talk to 3-year-old Chemo, I would say, great, let's have a conversation about this little weirdo. Because though I was pulling in information, the ears around me were not prepared to hear that kind of information. They just weren't prepared to hear it. And even though I grew up in an intuitive household, my intuitive household was not prepared for me to share that kind of information. And then eventually, when we found this person to be real, then there was a moment of panic. Well, what does that mean if this kid is doing this? And granted, there are educational approaches, ethical approaches to make sure that the reader and the observer are at a place of cohesion. So it's not so overwhelming.
That's it. It's interesting you mentioned, because one of the questions we have to the side over here, it's like you almost knew this question was up here with your intuitive self, was that moment of, of when did you know that you were different? Like you just knew something about you was not neurotypical. You weren't like everyone else. So you're saying at 3 years old, at 3, you had that awareness that I'm seeing and knowing things that other people just don't know.
Well, I didn't at 3, I was too young to know that I knew, but I knew that I knew. My cognitive brain obviously hadn't developed yet. By the time I was 4, I was doing genealogy, meaning pulling in first and last names to be helpful for genealogical records. In high school, I started to do something that I veered away from. I was able to start finding plot numbers of places that people couldn't find anymore. My family has some kind of property in this area, and the plot number would pop up into my mind. And I veered away from doing some of that work because I started to feel an extreme amount of pressure if I didn't get things correct. Now,
Mm.
granted, I feel like I would be able to do that kind of work again, but I just kind of leaned away from that genealogical work as a young kid. But the development from age 3 to I'm now 45 to where I'm at now is always a continual state of change and growth and change and growth. And also letting go of things that never served me. Because again, when you pick up on that stuff that feels scary or nefarious or dark, when you pick up on that, a non-developed mind is going to judge all of that information as things that feel demonic or
Right.
attacked, right? And I never felt that way about those kinds of things, but they did scare me as a
Yeah.
kid at all times. And this is why I'm so grateful to have learned how to meet with other individuals who are more skilled than I was at the time to help guide me through the appropriate language so my fear response could settle a little bit.
Yeah. So you can move. So, and then there's the point where you want to, and at least I can attest to, I want to fit in and have the human experience and the body experience and the people experience, and navigate. But I also don't, and I don't want to walk around fearfully even as well. So I know many of us, like, we kind of quieted it down a little bit. We pick up on things, but we're quiet with it so we can kind of find our way around the world. And then when it seems like you're saying the right teachers found you and you were able to build and develop to where you were able to use it as a skill where it could be helpful to you and the people who you would be helping.
And I think that one of the things that people make an assumption of me that is actually incorrect is that I'm always tuned on and engaged, and I am not. I tune on at the beginning of my day before sessions. I tune out at the end of the day unless I'm creating content. I keep my abilities tuned up during content, so I speak as Lightseer. When I'm done with my content, I tune everything down, and I tune down quickly. Just because it is overwhelming to be in an avatar of Lightseer 24 hours a day. And I wish that I could have learned that earlier because I spent
Mhm.
most of my life in burnout because I didn't know how to turn things down. I didn't know
Yeah.
how. And I was always engaged to the point where I couldn't sleep. I was the worst person to have a sleepover with because I was always being inundated by some kind of spirit consciousness trying to make contact with me about my friend's dad's mother who was in the next room or something like that. And it was too much info. But, that's why development is important. You
It's true.
learn how to tune up and tune down. Wow,
You learn how to, that was actually one of the questions. I'm telling you, your answer, speaking of being in tune, like I can check off one of your questions on here, but they were asking that about you. Like you just answered your own question. This is great.
yeah, and the way that I think about it is, if we were to run a washer machine on a
Mm.
full cycle 24 hours out of the day, eventually that washing machine is going to break down because it is not designed to run 24 hours out of the day. And we don't want ourselves to get to that breakdown phase. I mean, I don't know if you have experienced this, but I have seen people on social media that say, I used to be a medium. And now I don't do that because of, and I think to myself, well, technically, it sounds like you were an unskilled medium who was getting feelings that weren't being validated. And therefore, it scared you without any kind of protections or understanding. So when you say that you turned it off and you're now leaning into a different direction, you never fully engaged with it. And it
Right.
spooked you. So
That's
now
right.
you have made this big choice to pivot your life because you were running away from things as opposed to investigating.
Right. You let fear guide you rather than the curiosity and learning healthy boundaries, right? If you don't have the healthy boundaries in your physical world, you're not likely to have them in the spiritual world. And so it is that, like, for me, I found I had to learn how to care for myself and meet myself and greet myself in love. And that when I approached that, that's all I ever, those are the lenses that I would then see that spirit energy through. It wasn't until I really started to learn how to self-love that then I could recognize the only thing I was attracting was love. And the fear was just my mind trying to fill in the gap, trying to make judgments on the information coming in.
Anna, can I punctuate that for just a moment? Because I think that one of the largest misdiagnoses with individuals who maybe have the gift of sight or the gift of mediumship and they work on their psychic abilities, when they still use language of, I know that there's a demon in this room, I know that there's an attachment there, that for me, because again, when I look at the world beyond spirit, the world looks like a series of frequencies to me. And when you make statements like that, it tells me there is unprocessed shadow trauma there, unprocessed. So to capitalize on what you just said, when you work on really excavating and ameliorating your own shadow side and educating and working with love, 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 that becomes the template. That becomes the projection. So all spirit consciousness is going to work with your current vocabulary. And if your current vocabulary is lacking in development because there's still trauma there, then guess what you're going to see? And that's hard to hear. That's because people will say, well, I'm seeing these scary things because I have unprocessed stuff. And I say, well, there's an aspect of that that is actually very, very true. Because when you see with the lens of love, spirit consciousness, the highest form of consciousness, connects to you within that vocabulary.
That's it. You're exactly right. It reminds me of, I love it because it reminds me of, with even as a preschool teacher, right? I remember coming into classrooms, and if you worked with kids as well, so we can relate on this topic, and somebody would label somebody a bad kid. I just want to talk about that. That's that bad child. That's that bad kid, right? They're the ones with the problem, and that was because of that label. That's how they were treated. That's how people engaged with, and surprise, surprise, that's how that child then engaged back. Like you're creating this conversation this way. Then definitely not perfect, but I'm awkward and goofy and weird and I kind of person, and I'm kind of like, well, I see this differently, right? I don't see it this way. I see a kiddo here who's kind of trying to communicate in an adult world as a little kid and trying to navigate. And I'm curious why he interacts this way. Why is this child biting? What words are they not able to express? What's going on? What's overstimulating in this environment that is creating this type of a response? And once I leaned in with curiosity of why they were engaging in this way, and the labels were taken off, the judgment was taken off, I could meet this child where they were at. And I would have people say to me, well, what are you sneaking in? What treats are you giving them? What gifts are you giving this child to be so good? I'm like, I'm just meeting them where they're at. And where I'm meeting them where they're at was without the judgment. And so I would always get sent the hard kids, and I'd have the quietest classroom. I'd have the happiest classroom. But it was meeting each kiddo where it was at, where they were at, in order to meet their needs. And I think sometimes we need to parent our inner child that is holding on to that fear.
Absolutely. And by going forward and tuning into the inner child and having communication to that, all of that is excavating old shadow. All of it is.
Yeah.
One of the things that my father was a social worker when I was growing up, and he was so smart because one of the things that he would do that I didn't know until I was older in high school is he would see the different insecurities that I had as a little boy, but he would change them up. And he would always say things like this: son, you have such a wonderful, articulate voice. I really love hearing how you communicate to your teachers and communicate to the people around you, because in essence, I was very shy when it came to communication with my teachers and not advocating for myself. So he would take the thing that he could see as my shadow and try to flip the narrative. And I remember thinking to myself, he's right. I'm very good at communicating to my teachers. And it wasn't until I was older, Dad was like, I said that because you showed all these signs. And I was like, well, I remember that I felt that way, but I remembered I changed my mind. He's like, yeah, because you changed your mind, actually changed the mind. So
you changed your mind, the way you saw it, so then it changed the way you engaged with it, and then ended up being a positive experience for you and helps you be where you are now. And that's go, Dad. What an amazing father.
So lucky. So lucky. Oh my gosh, next cookie.
Next cookie.
I have a double cookie. This one is like merged. Oh my gosh, twin flame cookie. I can't even imagine.
Twin flame cookie.
I don't believe in twin flame. Okay, let's break open the next one. How did you get these messages inside? So skilled. What a skilled little medium you are. Not, you're not little, but let's open this next.
I am 5'3".
Really? You got big energy. Okay, this one is from Gigi. This one is your most memorable encounter with spirit. That's a hard question because we have so many, right?
That's a hard one.
We have so many. I guess I can't possibly say that my most memorable experience, but I will say that my most exciting experience is when you see the person, the sitter, the actual physical human alive individual shift energy because of understanding from the other side. When that happens, so now we'll speak the language of medium and the language of seer, because those two things are not necessarily the same. As medium, when I'm sitting into that avatar and I'm helping spirit consciousness come through and make conversations with this other individual to kind of help them move through some kind of stagnation. When that person gets it, when they say that is my grandmother's name, and she would say things like that. When you get that moment of recognition, now putting on my goggles of seer, the whole entire electromagnetic energy around the sitter completely changes. Visually, it changes. And this is, I wish everyone could just, it looks like plasma shoots outside of their body. It literally, it's like it pulls off of the body, which makes that electromagnetic energy field get large, much larger. It's quite expansive. Sidebar, as a little aside, when I started to meet with neuroscientists about how can I make more validation scientifically, when I started to meet with neuroscientists, all these weird things that I would say, well, the energy does this, and it looks like the electromagnetic field does this, when they would say, Kimo, we can actually validate that, meaning that we would measure people's electromagnetic field. And some neuroscientists believe that it can be measured up to 29 feet outside of the body, contingent on how much energy, emotion you give off. But some scientists believe that it can actually be felt much larger than that, which is what I believe. We can measure 29 feet with our equipment, but there's also the things that we can not measure, meaning that it's the quantum field of energy. So for example, you and I on opposite ends of the United States right now, still feeling this symbiotic connection right now, technically would be, a quantum moment right now. Energy doesn't need to go 29 feet because we're more than 29 miles away from each other. many miles and miles and miles away from each other.
Do you think that's also like mediumship though, where like when people will ask, right, how come, and this comes up as a question, surprise, surprise, how come my loved one can be communicating to you over Zoom if they're getting a reading from you, Kimo, right? You're seeing a loved one around, but they're with me as well. Like, how does that work? That's an energy. So I don't know if you want to talk about how that works for people, how is that loved one able to be in both places,
And I'll talk about the way that it visually shows up for me, and please interject. I would love to hear your opinion about this as well. When you're looking at spirit consciousness, because they are outside of body, they are no longer in need of dimensional form or dimensional thinking, in 3D thinking. So because of that, spirit is multidimensional, which means it communicates in multiple ways at the same time, which means that if you're at a funeral for your father, well, father energy could be around you, but around your mother and around your brother and your cousins, all at the same time, all getting variations of different experiences at the same time, because spirit is multi-dimensional now at this place, because it's no longer in a 3D body.
That's it. It's not contained. I just think about it like we keep trying to visualize this energy in this contained body. And it's just, to me, it's like sunlight. It's vast, it's bright, it's beautiful. It's the way I see the energy. It fills a space, and I'm more of a feeler than seer. I know you see things. The Huggable healer, I literally feel like I feel energy more. And I would say I want them to put those little probes on my body and watch where it lights up when the loved ones touch me, because I can feel their energy next to me, like, and actually see the energy. I'm sure you see the shift. I feel that shift. And so I can feel them next to me, and then I can feel them next to you.
That is huge. Huge. May I tune in just a little bit, friend?
Yes, please.
When I look at you, if I were to put on my seer goggles for a moment and just take a look at how Hannah works with intuitive energy. And as a little quick aside, people ask all the time, how do you know how this person works with intuitive energy? For me, every lane of intuition, Hannah, has its own frequency. Meaning
Mhm.
that audiency looks completely different than buoyancy on an electromagnetic energy level. The frequencies have different colors, they have different shapes, they have different patterns. Some of them even have different sounds. And you just said something that is much more large than I think that you realize. Maybe you realize, but let me just kind of help you put some stuff into words. When I look at you, that vibration of what you just said feels similar to, but is not exactly the same to clairsentience. You know, when
Mhm.
we learn about clairsentience, one of the things that I struggled with conventional training was I was told that clairsentience is feeling based. But when you look at the electromagnetic field with someone who is dominant clairsentient based, it is not in the full sensory of emotions. It moves within the quantum field of awareness. What you just described is something different, feels similar to sentience, but is slightly different. And that one moves into the frequencies of what is physically felt or what is felt because you are in the approximation to it. So there are different languages. I've heard some people call that physical empathy. And I would say, well, yes, that is an aspect of physical empathy, but physical empathy is a physicalization of emotional energy. But what
Mhm.
happens if you get a physicalization of energy that is not emotional, that is not in connection to sentient quantum field? For me, there might be other words for it. I just call that clairtangency because it is a tactile kinesthetic response to something. Why am I bringing that up? Your tangency is very high. Just looking at just the electromagnetic field of energy, it's very, very high. Usually when I take a look at clairtangency, it is in the most random part of the body. It tends to ruminate predominantly as a base point around the nape of the bicep, actually. Right? Isn't that interesting? And it does like a really interesting cone-like vibration, but then it expands to the body. And
Mhm.
then when I take a look at your field, if someone were to hug you without you saying anything, if you were to allow me to say, here's where your body just moved, here's where the energy shifted, your brain would say, but that's where I feel it too, because it shifts the actual energy. So, as an amplification of what your current practice is, well, I know that I receive a lot of energy when I'm in physical contact. Hannah, it's actually much larger than you realize. So can I give you a little breadcrumb?
Yes, this is wonderful. Thank you,
I
Chemo.
guarantee you, if you let me look around your house, I would find things in your home that are so specific to a Hannah memory. Meaning like
Mm.
a little stone that I found on this path, or a little shell that I found with my son, or a little feather that I found, on the sidewalk one day, because it reminds me of that physical feeling of that walk or that beach or this memory I have with my child.
Yes.
What clairtangents do. There is physicalizations of emotional experiences all over their house because they're highly sentimental. Sound like you?
Literally. And it's funny because you said I'm a kinesthetic learner. I have to touch everything. I touchy, 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 feel, feel, feel.
Yeah. May I go just a step further? And please tell me if I overstep.
No, this is wonderful. You're so sweet. Thank you, Chemo.
I have found that clairtangency runs when I'm looking at frequency of intuitions, they have a tendency to kind of like move in dominant frequencies and rising frequencies and dormant frequencies. Usually clairtangency is in a dominant frequency perspective for people who are on the spectrum of neurodivergency.
That makes sense. Like that's 100%.
Your experience in this physical body is a supersensory experience, meaning that textiles, you can't wear certain kinds of fabrics, or certain fabrics spark your attention, or different kinds of things physically feel off to me because I can't be around. It is this super sensory experience. And here's what's even more exciting, Hannah. When a clairtangent individual like you, I guarantee you, if I were to just observe and watch you hug people, certain people would overactivate you. Like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of energy. Oh my gosh, what are we doing right now? Or certain people would drain him because that person may not have an understanding of their energy naturally drained. So Hannah, as physical touch relation, is going to be physically drained. But here's the magical part of tangency. I already know that you will have different people in your life where when you hug them, it recharges the body. as if there's this like outpouring of energy, which means that you have had that with strangers. You have had that with small children, with elderly. It doesn't matter what they look like, how old they are, doesn't matter. Because when a clairtangent individual like you ever makes contact with someone who has the same vibration of tangency in that moment, it literally recharges the body like two puzzle pieces.
Oh, that makes sense. Like with little kids, you know, they literally just run up and hug you. You know, they don't even know you. Just like the very first child in my preschool, one of my very first kiddos, to validate what you're saying, because I love it. You talk about this, and this is goes full circle to the way that you communicate. You give evidence, but then you look for evidence as well, like physical evidence to qualify what it is that you're explaining, and I have exact evidence of exactly what you're saying, is that to qualify it. I'd opened my preschool the first day I opened it. This little boy had come, and the mom was talking and looking around, and this little boy just leans out of her arms and goes like this, and she immediately took a second. She's like, no, wait a minute, this is, I said, what? You know, I'm like, hi, come on over. It's like, no. So he's neurospicy, right? He's on the spectrum. He doesn't like to be touched.
Mhm.
He doesn't let people hold him. And he was just like, I want to hold you. I want
Yes.
to hold you. And he ended up being my first kiddo in my school. And he stayed with me. In fact, I'm still friends with his mom to this day, you know. So it's funny you say that.
Take a moment to zoom out for a second. We ask ourselves, but why did he do that to you? And again, vibrationally, two vibrations move together, right? So it's these wonderful moments of reflection. I love moments like that. And in fact, many children on the spectrum, well, like you'll go to make contact with them, touch their shoulder, and they kind of move away because they don't like to be touched. But technically, I have found, because there's so much tangency in the body, the lack of wanting to be touched is because they perceive too much energy when you make contact with them. Their brains may not perceive that, but the intuitive body perceives that. I gain too much energy when you make contact with me, so I move myself away from that energy.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah, I can get overstimulated, and I'll stem and I'll do things to my
Yeah.
own self to overstimulate, and then you just have to pull back, regroup, reground, and then you're able to reconnect. Yeah.
Hannah, it is a magical ability. It really is true. I wish more people could amplify that one faster, because then the whole world would be so huggy.
They would be like, hey, hug time. Speaking of hug time, there's another hug in one of those cookies, I'm sure. So do you want to reach in?
Oh my gosh, I'm blabbing and blabbing. Let me open some more.
Wonderful. I'm so loving our conversation. This is great.
Let's open another one. Okay.
We got another cookie.
So
And I'm gonna
this,
take a bite of my cookie while you do it.
yes, you might need some nice soy milk with that afterwards.
Mm.
Okay, so this one is from Brittany. Favorite guilty pleasure food? What Hannah is eating right now.
It's like we planned that.
My guilty pleasure is anything in the realm of really heavy chocolates. I love fudgy brownies and fudgy black chocolate cookies. Anything that has a really big, dense, heavy feel. It is more than a guilty pleasure. I have been known to like buy an entire tray of brownies, and it's terrible. It's terrible. Especially as a dancer, it was so hard. Because all I wanted to do was pig out on chocolate, but not like chocolate bars. It's that fudgy quality. So that's my guilty pleasure.
That's your guilty pleasure for food. I think another, in fact, it's funny. There was another question someone asked you about food, and they had said, okay, so what's one that people might be surprised that you find off-putting that other people like, but you're like, I don't get it. Like some people like avocados. They're like, I don't get why people like avocados. Or what's the one food you're like, I don't understand people liking that.
Licorice.
We can't be friends, chemo. That's it. It's over. Our friendship is ruined. Ruined.
There
Chemo.
is something about the smell of anise that turns my senses off. So whether it's licorice root or anise, it throws my senses off. So then to translate that into licorice candy, I can't get it. It throws my senses off. When I smell anise, it actually activates the very back of my salivary glands. And it's so weird. And I get this very numb-like sensation in the very back of my throat. I mean, maybe it's some kind of past life, right? But it's literally, I get this numbing sensation in the back of my throat, and it just puts my system off.
Okay, so the science brain, because I love that you love science too, right? So I want to go to the science of it. Licorice is one of those things that if you eat too much of it, it's, give you high blood pressure. I wonder if your body has a natural inclination to not want it. Does high blood pressure run in your family at all?
It, you're so good. I have high blood pressure naturally. Because of how I move and when I go to the doctor, like, what are you doing? Because I'm very healthy, I'm very active, I watch what I eat, but my
Yeah,
system, we learned because I go up and down and up and down and up and down so much with energy, my
yeah,
system has a tendency to be in high blood pressure. Not all the time, but
yeah,
it's very normal. And I get tested my blood pressure every 3 months.
yeah.
And
Oh, wow.
that's one of the things they tell me quite frequently. This is a little unusually high.
But
Hannah, I never knew
look,
that.
look, we both are learning so much from each other that your body is naturally telling you, don't, no, no, don't. It's sending you warning signs.
I never knew that.
Only reason I know it is because I am now on the other side of this. I am in love with licorice. Anything licorice, I'm excited. If there's licorice, I want it. I've got to have it. And I remember, especially from the root, right? Like chewing, just walking around chewing licorice root. And I ended up having high blood pressure and found out it was because I was ingesting too much licorice. They're like, Hannah, like a piece or two a day, but I would go get a bag and I would compulsively it'd be my safe food. And I would just overeat it. And that's how I found out.
I love learning that about me. Thank you.
There we go. Next cookie. Let's see. It's a little nugget of information, a little.
Learning that. Oh my goodness. So I'm visiting my nephews and nieces. They're gonna love eating all these little cookies.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Let's open another one. You put so much work into this. Whoever you have next coming up, I hope they enjoy it.
Oh, it's gonna be you.
I hope so.
Chemo back every week. Every week, you guys. Every week.
Anytime. Okay, so this one says, what was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome in your life to do with your job? So the biggest battle to overcome specifically with tuning into what we do, when I was a young kid, even though I could communicate to spirit and it felt overwhelming to me. By the time I was in high school, I was like, turn this off. I don't want this. I don't like how it feels at
Yeah.
all. I started to do readings on my teachers in high school. And one of the things that I learned very, very quickly is that when someone is in need of some kind of healing, for me, healings are physical manifestations of emotional stuff that's going on. If it's not like environmentally induced, I was in a car accident.
Yeah.
When it comes to healings, for me, when I try to like plug things back in, things that I can see, I would find that they would go back to being in disrepair within a few weeks. And it turned me off because I was like, I was too young to realize what I was doing. But what turned me off is I think that person doesn't want to be healed. They want to be fixed, but they don't want to be healed. So it kind of turned me off. But now, looking back, I get very excited because it was a big hurdle for me. But I don't view it that way anymore. Now, every single day when I work with my clients, this is going to sound so terrible. Don't judge me, community.
No judge.
I look forward to people who are coming in with malady because it gets me to exercise my ability differently. Meaning that out of all the clients that I do every single day, when someone comes in with a malady, I'm like, great, dude, let's do it. Let's do it right now. Let's organize. Let's do this. Let's go through the body. Let's figure this out. Let's fix this. And I love that there was a hurdle that instead of saying, I'm never going to do that for the rest of my life, there was an excitement about it. But I had to let it be crazy, wild. I don't want to touch that bad boy for a while until I got to the point with development where I could say, let's now challenge the way that we're doing this business and let's see if we can be more helpful to the community. So the healing modalities is what I have a preference towards now, working with doctors. And not every doctor is open to working with me, but many doctors are open to working with me. So through that hurdle has now become one of my most favorite things to do every single day.
I love what you did. Like, that's a great thing to say. It's like, well, a doctor doesn't want a broken person, but they want the broken person to come to them so they can fix them, and be part of that healing process. You're not asking for people to be broken. You're just aware there are broken people. Let them find me. Let them have access to me so that I can be of service. So I think you just reframed it in a beautiful way and understood your calling better is what it sounds like you're saying.
Hannah, thank you for reframing it.
I just love the way you did that you embraced your calling rather than feeling as a burden. You found a place for it in your life that excites you. And I know that with mediumship, I took a 2-year break. I had burnout. I thought I had to help everybody. I thought if you know,
Big
and it was exciting, right? You're excited, like, wow, what's spirit going to say now? And but it's just like you can't go to theme park every day either. You know, there's a point where it's just overstimulating.
that right there. It 100%. And I was doing 9 a day. And my sessions are an hour long. And
Oh, chemo.
it was too much. And same as you, I was like, but I love the assistance and I want to be of help and I want to help all these individuals. But at the very end, you cannot go to a music park every single day. You just can't. You can't eat that funnel cake every single day. Your body will go into a sense of alarm. So I had to greatly cut back. And I had to release the guilt. I had to release the obligation of doing it and say, I am of no use to the collective if I am of no use. It's not going to work. So I had to greatly scale back. So now I don't do 9. I refuse to do 9 again.
That was it. I think that's it. That was the biggest thing, is like, we do have to find our threshold, right? And recognizing that the maturity of how much work we can do that's feasible, that we can still function. We still function and do our job and engage with other people. And, you can't be all work and no play. It's exciting,
Absolutely.
but it has its time and place and space.
Absolutely. You see, Hannah, we need a play date.
I know we do. So play some. Okay, let's see what else.
Okay.
I love the cookies. I love it. It's like we don't know what's coming up. We're getting to see what everybody's questions are, and it's so funny how the flow of conversation. My concern is like when you're playing a game, how's it going to flow? How's it going to go? But look, I love this. You can just see that the questions
it's so easy. It's so tactile. It just
the tactile. You called me out. You caught me. Learner.
Okay, this one is from Steph. This one says, what is something you do when you get bored? Well, I don't get bored. I love that question, but I don't get bored. I learned very young from one of my educators. She said to me, chemo, because I said I was bored one day. She said, only boring people get bored. And I said, oh, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So at this point, I always make sure that I have at any given time 5 books on my reading stand that I can gather. At any time, I've got at least 5 different podcasts that I have on different cues. I've got 5 different books. Actually, I have more than 5 on my Audible that I can take if I wanted to go do a walk. I don't ever want to be bored. If I'm being bored, what I'm really saying to my body is that I'm at a place of stagnation. And stagnation and rest are different. Being at a state of rest is wonderful and needed and nurturing. A place of stagnation means I have turned everything down and I feel like I'm at a place of unknowing. And unknowing is exciting, but unknowing because you don't know what to do is a little bit different. And I don't ever want to be at that place. So if I get stagnant, I ask questions to someone else who knows more information than I do. So that way I can pull myself out of my booty.
I love it, because you're saying, like, I go from how to get out of stagnation is with curiosity. So you just said that, like, if I'm feeling stagnant, if I'm getting bored, the way that I move out of it is curiosity. And that really was one of the questions right here. With someone had asked another question, was like, what does chemo do in his free time when he's not working? Like what is it that you like to do with your free time? So,
well, with my free time, that has shifted and changed, and I'm still in my business building phase. I've got all these projects I'm supposed to be working on with my creative strategist that I can kind of work on. But if I don't think about work, if it's not work related, my most favorite thing to do is to hang out with people that re-energize. And I have I have a very tight friendship group in New York City, but it's friends who all know how I work, how I communicate. They're interested in it, their investigations into that, them wanting to know more about themselves through energy work so we can have very open, energetic conversations. When I'm visiting my relatives, which I'm doing right now, I have 13 nieces and nephews, and I adore spending time with them. I'll drive to my sister's house just to put the nephews to bed. Then I'll go into my brother's home because they're all in communal areas. I'll go to my brother's home and just kind of hang out with the kids before they wind down to go to bed. Because I love being an uncle. I love it so much. I just love the little babies. The little babies.
I love them littles because they're curious. They're walking. They're honest, and you can see. They say what they mean and mean what they say. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Yeah, that's kind of my free time is hanging out with them. But as much as I can, I spend time in the woods if I can. Let's do a little ASMR. You ready?
Yes, let's do it.
I'm open. I don't know if you can hear that. I think I just made a mess.
Darn it! I believe you. Wait, go ahead. We'll sync it up.
I don't. Let's, I don't know if you can hear it. Oh, these aren't very crunchy.
No, I think some of them get
Soft.
soft.
No, they're soft and sweet. Okay, this one is from Phil.
Okay, Bill.
Phil asks, share a belief that has shifted that that you once believed and now don't or didn't and now do. So my major belief paradigm shift has been the idea of demon. And I grew up religious in a very religious household, and I still bear extreme reverence to religion and different ideas. But I also realized that I was being told certain things by religion, and it wasn't about the religion itself. It was about individuals who believed certain aspects of the religion, meaning that in the religion that I grew up in, I would have the same conversation about the same topic, but someone else would have a completely different perspective. But yet my brain was only sticking the things that felt scary. And it wasn't until I was older I realized, wait a second, that wasn't so much about the religion. It was about that person's interpretation of it, which felt scary and nefarious. And for some reason, my young, malleable brain stuck with the things that felt scary and nefarious. So one of the big unlearnings for me to do was that religious dogma that I grew up in. And again, I have extreme reference towards the way that I was raised, while at the same time taking a more academic approach, while combining that with a metaphysical and energetic approach.
So it sounds like it laid the groundwork, but then you were able to, as you were studying, like dissect and unpack, is like say like unpack those beliefs and where they originated, and then decide, does this belief system really serve me, or is this something somebody was trying to teach me and it was kind of cloaked in fear? If I pull that fear away, what's deeper? What's underneath that fear? And kind of diving in a little bit, you know.
Absolutely. So in that idea of what I once believed, it's just challenging the things that I thought that I knew. And I hope that I will continue to do that for the rest of my life, including the things that I know now. I hope that chemo in 2 years will feel challenged by the things that I currently know, so that way I can expand and grow them. And again, and I say this to everyone that I work with, I want us all to not think of intuition as a finish line. I mean, how many clients have you had, Hannah, that say, I just feel like I'm so slow to it. I feel like I'm just not getting anything. Well, it's that pressure of needing to know everything now, as opposed to saying, but there is no finish line.
That's it. This is a continual. It's a continuum.
Continual development.
Yeah.
All the time, at all times.
At all times.
Let's just keep on going.
Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Don't want all that cookies. Okay, let's do another one. Oh, it's on this side over here. I know my nephews are going to eat these cookies up.
That's wonderful.
Little angels.
I did have the kids here, so I have extra dough from when I made the cookies. They're asking me, they're like, "Are we making those?" And one of them was like, "Can I have one?" And I had to like go hide the bag of cookies in my office because I knew they weren't going to make it.
The dough is just so sweet. It's delicious. Okay, so this is from a person named Zeal. I love your name, Zeal. I love that name. List your average way you spend any given day. So I'll quickly just talk about a work day for me. Depending on where I'm at in the world, it will change what time I start my day. But on average, my sessions usually start anywhere between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. Let's talk about a regular 8 a.m. day. If it's an 8 a.m. day, I make sure that I am in preparation 45 to 60 minutes ahead of time before the beginning of the day, meaning that I do not do social media, I do not do text, I do not do emails. I put on Hertz music to kind of get my vibration to be lifted. I've got a physical practice that I do ahead of time at the very beginning of my day. And then I jump into the day. A typical day, if it starts at 8 o'clock, will end at about 3 o'clock. And I take clients every hour. No, my sessions are an hour with a 15-minute break in between to kind of recalibrate. At the end of that 3-hour day, I have to take a long walk, no matter if it's raining or snowing, or because I have to detox all of the content that I build up inside of my body. I must detox that energy out. And then, this is gonna sound crazy, Hannah, I do a really quick diagnostic scan of all of my abilities, just to make sure that I'm kind of recalibrating. And then I prep the following day with all the clients, because I do like curriculums for every client. And then I put Lightseer to bed. And then I'm a human. So that's a typical day.
Well, I love the overlap of the practices. And I'm sure some people are going, "Oh, I do some of those." Like, "Oh, I should try that." What you were saying about, for me, again, I have to unpeople. I have to unpeople. I've got to disconnect from people. I don't schedule clients if I just had a social media engagement. I've got to go. And sometimes it, like you said, it may be 20, 30 minutes, an hour. Sometimes I even need 2 hours. It just depends on where I'm at, right? And there's some type of walk, like you're saying, I've got to get a walk in. If I don't have that grounding walk and that energy, my body doesn't have some way to process the energy going through, or I like to, it's funny, although I'm not professionally trained, and I promise you nobody wants to watch me. In my bathroom, I can shake my booty.
You should absolutely listen. Let's take that right now and talk about that.
Yeah.
Especially for some, because I guarantee you're going to have people who are listening to this who also feel a profound connection to what we talked about earlier, which is you in a tangent expression intuitively. Physical movement is imperative. It is imperative, especially if you can remove the judgment, which means there should be a once a week dance party that you put on with random music with you and your kids or you in your shower, and you just move. You could slow dance with yourself. You could put on some groovy tunes in the shower, but it helps to excise the energy out. Let it leave the body and the system.
I used to say, I'll do the whole, I'll take the stairs. So I have stairs in the house. So in between readings, if I feel like the energy, or even online, if it's the energy feels kind of stagnant and I know I need to move it, just go and walk up and down stairs a little bit. And it's amazing how that movement gets the energy flowing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hannah, this is another aside, but when you watch someone like kind of recalibrate and put on new music that kind of moves you and vibes you and didgeridoo or something that's very, very earthy, and you watch them go through a state of joy because their electromagnetic energy is shifting, we have found that if you then take photograph, when the room is kind of dimmed and the flashes are going off, the orbs change when there is music versus no music. Meaning that because your energy is in a shift of change, all the energy around you is also in a shift of change. And, orbs could be a variety of things. Orbs could be spirit consciousness. It could be aspects of super intelligence. It could just be energy movement, but it comes in closer when you look at those pictures prior and post music.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes so much sense. And especially when I'm doing readings, I'll have music on. And one of the things is when we're filming, I can't have the music, right? Because if they need to cut in and out, we can't have the background music. But when I'm just in a private session and you have the music going, that makes sense when you say that, because I have the music blasting and I'll have the Zoom camera kind of set up ready for the reading, and I'll see more orb activity. And now I'm going to have to play with that, Kima. You gave me a game.
Absolutely do it. Absolutely do it. It's a very, very exciting process. And as another aside, that also happens in the water. And what's really tricky, because, just the cognitive part of us say, well, there's a lot of dander in that room or a lot of dust, which is also very true. As you're dancing around, more dander picks up. But there's a difference between dander and orb. They look different. Right? There's a sense of intelligence with how orb energy moves. But that energy can also be seen in the water, in the ocean, when you do underwater photography. It also can get challenging because there's always debris in the ocean, but there's a difference between debris and orb in the water, because it will look exactly the same as it does outside of the water, where, those orbs have literally a series of intelligences.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So Kima, I think we have time for one more cookie. So I don't know how many you have in front of you, but if you want to give the bowl a stir, somebody's going to get to hear their question, and then maybe we'll save a few for the after show.
Okay, let's move this around.
Okay, here we go.
There we go. Oh, this one came out nice and easy. Okay, this final question is by Ari. Ari asks, what is your most unpopular food opinion and your least favorite food? Well, so we've already talked about anise, but I'll give another unpopular food that I don't like. I don't like gummies.
Really?
It's so rude of me. I don't like gummy bears. I don't like dried fruits like apricots. For me, it just it's so weird. I just feel like I'm eating cartilage. Like dried apricots feel like earlobes and raisins feel like elbows. There's something about the dried. I just don't get it.
You're like, it doesn't compute. It doesn't. Now, here's what's really, so that's my question. Are you a vegetarian then, or do you tend to shy away from meat? Is that, do you notice?
I've done the full spectrum. So I grew up as a meat eater, but then I experienced with being a vegetarian, then a vegan. I was a raw foodist for a while. I tried pescatarianism. I didn't really resonate with like keto or things like that, but I have tried all different spectrums just to kind of be curious, because I like to challenge my body just to see what my body does. And in those challenging of my body, I found that certain diets don't do well with my body. meaning that when I went vegan, my body lost everything, and I was still doing supplements, but my body lost everything, and it just didn't work for my body. It didn't work.
That's a great for us to talk about is in the spiritual community, because a lot of folks, I don't know if you remember, like, again, we have to unlearn things. I was being taught that the certain foods that I was eating would make me more or less spiritual. I don't know, have you ever heard that with people saying that with foods, and you can't eat animals because of vibrations? I don't know if you've ever heard that dialogue.
Absolutely. I've heard that about animal vibration. I've also heard that about sugar. I do think that it's a taster's choice. I think that you should experiment and see what works, which means take away meat and see what changes. And if things change, then you found a yes. If things don't change, then experiment with something different. I can see the value in why they would say that, but I do think that everything should be very specific. There's another seer that I worked with when I was younger. She was much more skilled than I was as a kid, and she always ate meat. I think it depends on the person. I really do. What about you?
I think that's really well said. Like, different food is going to do different things for different bodies. It's going to nourish us differently. And it's funny you say that, because Mr. Hannah, as we like to call my spouse, because he doesn't like his name on camera, so he's Mr. Hannah. I tried his diet. The you said it's a paleo diet. Oh,
Yeah.
Rebel, right? She heard the kids. And we're wrapping up this, sorry, Ben. So speaking of diets, with Mr. Hannah, I tried his diet, and he was the paleo diet. Here's Rebel coming to say hi. And it made me completely sick. It actually, the complete opposite. And when I looked at the food that I needed to eat for my body, it's literally the whole preschool teacher moment. Jack Sprat could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean. We were literally completely opposed and different. And my trying to eat what he ate made me sick, and he can't eat what I eat. So it was really interesting to really understand what you do. You need to check into your own body, try different things, what works,
Well, and also in connection to that, this is one of those things that I challenge all mediums and psychics, because when we are going through, sometimes people are just self-taught, they read a lot of books, or they read a mentor or a teacher or some kind of institution. I like to be very mindful of the practices that say, whenever you hear ringing, it's always on the right ear is spirit, and always on the left ear is higher self. And I say, no, you must discover those truths on your own. You must discover it on your own, because that information was true for that person who said that. It cannot be true for everyone on the planet, because we are all completely bespoke. It doesn't work that way. So with the food is one of those.
Food is one of the same things. Finding the food that works for your body, finding your spiritual practices that work with your body, finding your spirit practitioners so that you want to connect with, and you may start with one, and you may find that you find your way around and navigate your way along. And like you said, because it's a forever learning, forever journey. And when you're working with your students, I know you said this, like, you don't want someone reliant on you 24/7. You're building with them, you're connecting with them, but the ultimate goal is to release them, right? Is to allow them.
Absolutely. Well, I tell people on their very first session with me, if you get to the point where you need me, I have not done my job. I do not want anyone to need me. I actually don't like how that feels. Yeah. Even when I was a kid, when people feel like they needed to come to chemo to ask these things, no, I don't like how that feels. You don't ever need me. It makes me feel obligatory. I don't like it.
That's well said. That's well said. It's like as a medium, right? Like say, or even an empath or someone who works with energy. We're all psychic on some level. We all can intuitively tune in on some level. You may look to others to help guide you, but you don't need them to do it for you.
No, absolutely not. I had to tell a recent client, I said, you ask me so many questions. Like it's like I feel like you have me on speed dial, email after email after email, as opposed to please get uncomfortable. Please allow yourself to be uncomfortable, because discomfort is this wonderful duet. It's this wonderful dance. And as a former dancer, when you're dancing with a partner, you want her to push back a little bit. If she doesn't, it feels like you're dancing with a sack of flour. And you want pushback, and discomfort is the same way. We have to feel discomfort's pushback, so that way we know how to work with it. If we just say, I'm uncomfortable, I'm not going to do it, then that's not growth. Then I'm uncomfortable, let me just ask the person, let me just ask Hannah because she knows. Well, that's not growth.
Yeah.
That is the absolute negation of growth. We need to be able to lean into what is uncomfortable so we can get to know what it means.
Well, so speaking of getting to know what it means the world to me that you sat here and you played this game and that you answered everyone's questions. And I know not everybody's questions got answered completely. We are going to have an after show where we're going to dive in a little deeper with some of these questions, maybe bust out a couple more cookies. But in case some folks don't stay on for the after show and chemo, if they want to get in contact with you, if they want to learn more, how do they reach Chemo the Lightseer?
How do you get in touch with this crazy weirdo?
This amazing soul.
So there are multiple ways to find me. You can find me on my website, which is thelightseer.com. On thelightseer.com, I have monthly seminars. I do offer content, at least one video a day on my social media, on TikTok as The Lightseer, on Instagram as Aloha Lightseer. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on YouTube, on all the things, right? Just to create a footprint. And you can research all my information. My website is very, very thorough, meaning that there's multiple ways for you to make connections, whether that's in a session, whether that's in some kind of seminar, whether that's in a workshop that you attend. There's always a way to find me somewhere.
And there's always good information. The way that you give information to people and the practical application and the joy that which you bring it. It's like opening when you, like you said, you post a video a day. It's like opening a thought of something to consider every day. I feel like I know truly as a practitioner, I'm a better practitioner when your videos come up and they give me something to consider. They give me food for thought. So I really appreciate that, Chemo, continuing to do your work that you do. And yeah, I hope folks join us for the after show, but if they don't, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you like this content. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the Huggable Healer channel as well, where we'll have more episode of Mediumship and Meal. And, yeah, I just can't say thank you enough. So thank you, everybody, so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you.